Hi,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm in the bedroom, so I'm hiding from the kids.
Yeah, I know how that feels. Okay, so I know what you're doing here, Roxana, and I know why I've picked you to come. Can you just explain to everybody exactly what you do?
Mm, sure. So I'm Roxana Hussein. I am a um, transformation coach. So I offer hypnotherapy and neuro-linguistic programming to coach my clients who generally primarily have imposter syndrome, procrastination, and self-sabotage.
Yeah,
And they'll pitch up with all sorts of things. So it will be that I want to have a promotion in my job, but something's blocking me, or I don't have the confidence to go for the relationship I want or the
yeah.
career I want.
Hmm.
Um, so people turn up with all manner of things, but when we get to the crux of it, it's usually imposter syndrome, procrastination, and self-sabotage.
Hmm.
And so I do a lot of work around healing them to be able to free the limiting beliefs that they have around that, so that they can go forward and live
Live
their
a
life.
happy life. Yeah. Okay, so the reason I called you on today was obviously the series is all about getting brides ready and prepared
Mm.
for the future. And I think we spend a lot of time focusing on who the makeup artist is going to be, focusing who's going to do the cake, where's the venue, and even from young girls, even focusing on who we're going to get married to, but we never really think too much about what happens next. So really, I invited you today so you could give us your top 5 tips on mindset and getting prepared. And, because a lot of the time you can't really do much about other people. You can't change people. So this session is all about, empowering women and brides to go forward and, start on the best foot, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think when we get engaged to be married, the wedding day takes over everything. So we start planning who we're going to have as our makeup artist and which venue we're going to get married at, what catering we're going to have. And actually, it's a complete and utter distraction from allowing yourself, enabling yourself to be prepared for what's coming. And what's coming is a lifetime with somebody.
Yeah.
And I put together the top 5 things that have helped me. So I've been married 15 years. Sophia, how long have you been married?
7 years on Sunday.
7 years, right. So I've been married 15 years and you've been married 7 years. So I thought it'd be nice for us to combine our experience
Absolutely.
and
Every experience.
help girls who are about to be married to kind of think through the long term. So let's go past that sort of however long you're preparing to get married, but kind of
Mm,
think through what you can be doing as well during that time to prepare. So the top
absolutely.
5 tips are
I think even in the run up to the wedding, I think a lot gets revealed about people's personalities because you're under such extreme stress.
Mhm.
So, even on the wedding day, the stories I hear, oh my God, this happened and I'm so stressed, and even, there's a lot of communication in the run up to the wedding with my brides as well. So, there's always lots of stuff going on. And I don't know, it seemed to feel like, with your makeup artist, you feel like you can just, it's such an intimate setting. You feel like you can just say anything. And that's really what kind of spurred me because I just want everyone to live happily ever after. And anyway, you go ahead and give us those happy ever after tips.
well, I'll do my best. I'll do my
No
best. And
pressure.
my tips are going to be quite left field in that they're not the traditional things that you're going to want to or they're used to hearing about. So I'm not going to go into too much about the in-laws and the family because I feel that we can't change anybody else. The only person that we have control over is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about managing your emotions, it's about managing your expectations, and it's about going into marriage with your eyes wide open, knowing exactly who the person is, who the family is, and actually not pretending that you're going to be like, you should never marry a project, basically. You don't marry somebody and think, I'm going to be able to change them because
Or
nine
often some
times
people
out of
say, oh,
10
after we get married, I'm going to do this, and when we get married, I'm going to drop that habit. I'm going to, blah blah blah. So
Yeah, that's just not
Very
the right
effective.
mindset to go into
From
marriage
experience,
with.
I can tell you, just
Yeah, it doesn't work.
accept people, and it's not just your husband; it's everybody in every relationship in your life. Just accept them for who they are. But anyway, you go. Otherwise, I'll just start
Okay,
rambling.
so the top 5 things I'm going to go into are learning each other's love language. Okay, is the first one.
I am
Second
so
one is that exciting. Second one is nurturing your friendship. The third one is discussing finances. The fourth is agreeing how to resolve problems. And the fifth is building your dreams together. Okay, so I think if everybody does those 5 things, they're kind of setting themselves up for success. You know, they will set themselves up. So let's delve into them. So the first one is learning each other's love language. Now, this is where a lot of hearts get broken. So we think that the way we want to receive love is the way our partner likes to receive love too, right? So, for example, my husband is a grand gestures kind of a guy. He does nothing all year, and then once a year he'll do something enormous, which I'm not interested in. I'd rather have something small all year, you know, like every month or so, than have like a trip to New York or whatever he's done in the past. And it was then that I realized that's something that he wants. That's how he would like to receive love, but that's not how I would like to receive love. So it's interesting. At that time, I stumbled across a book by Gary Chapman. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No.
It's called The 5 Languages of Love.
Okay.
And
I need to take notes here.
Take notes.
Not of my love life, thank you, ladies.
So it's an amazing book, and it was a real eye opener in the sense that there's a quiz. So there's lots of information, but then there's a quiz that you both people take, and then it gives you a score, and you realize which category of love you fall into. Now there might be 2 that are kind of neck and neck, but generally there'll be one that really stands out. So the first one is words of affirmation. So you like it when the other person praises you. You like it when they confirm your good qualities and that kind of thing. That's what you need from a love perspective. The second is acts of service. Now, I didn't realize that this was a really strong one for me. So, you know, when he takes the bins out without me asking him, or when he takes the kids out in the park without me asking him, or just does lovely things around the house or for me, that's the big thing for me. And that can be a love language. Like that for me really shows me that he loves me deeply and cares about me, and he's thinking of me even when I'm not asking him to do stuff.
You may not recognize it when you're going into a relationship or whatever. This is that person's love language. So they may be doing all these things and you're like, oh, but you know, why didn't I get a diamond ring? And so and so's got, you know, is going to Dubai and I'm not, you know. So that's where you miss. But really, he's showing you his love in a different way. So it's
in the way. So he's probably showing you love in the way that he likes to receive love.
Okay.
And this is why this book is really interesting, because it helps you to really distinguish how you like to receive love. So the first one is words of affirmation. Then you've got acts of service. The third one is receiving gifts. So you talking about the diamond ring falls into that category, you know.
Yeah, I'm getting so excited. I'm not even getting the ring. But yeah, those things do make me happy, aren't they?
The fourth one is quality time. And this is where you just want to hang out with this person. You don't need anything else. You don't need any of the hustle and bustle and the glitz and glam. You just want to have quiet time alone with this person. And I think that's probably going to be really good for somebody who's going into marriage and they're actually moving in with the whole family. You know, they're moving in with a couple, you know, with another generation, and in-laws, as in, you know, younger members of the family. Quality time could be really high up in terms of your priority, just to kind of have that alone time where you're not both really shattered at the end of the day and you're having to figure out how to talk to each other
all the time, or being worried because you're already going into a situation where you're still figuring each other out oftentimes, because maybe the first time you're living together or whatever, and then on top of that you've got all these other relationships to manage. Exactly. Figured out one another.
Exactly. And the final one is physical touch. Yes, we're going there. So one of those is going to be a dominant one for you. That's going to be your love language. And the best way to figure it out is to get Gary Chapman's book called The Five Languages of Love. Sit down one evening with your fiance and do it together.
I think
And
that's
use
a good idea.
that time, or even if you're married, like we did it about 5 years ago, actually. So, you know, we'd been married 10 years. And it was so revealing. It was
You can
so...
spend a lifetime with somebody and just, you may adore them and love them, but just not get them. The amount of times I hear my clients, I don't understand why he does this, and I don't understand why he does that. And, you know, it's been this many years and he doesn't know this. But, you know, it's all about learning about one another, like you said. And
we change as well. You know, obviously motherhood changes women. Age changes us. Different transitions in our life changes, and actually you have to keep staying in touch with each other and connecting and knowing how the other person ticks. So that, I would say, is learn each other's love language. Honestly, if there's nothing else that you take from this today, do that, because not only is it fun, but it's actually really revealing, and you can have some amazing conversations from it. So when I realized that mine was acts of service, I wrote down 5 things that within that category of acts of service that I gave to him. He's got them on his notes on his phone, and he knows that if he does one of those 5 things, and they're really small things, but they mean the world to me. If he does one of those things every now and again, once a week, once a fortnight, that confirms to me that he loves me the way I need to be loved.
And I think, you know, a lot of people can get this mixed up, and I think a lot of relationships break down because of this misunderstanding, because you think, you know, I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing so much for her, and then you've got your external family members or friends going, oh my god, you know, you do this for her, you do that for her, and or your girlfriends, you know, you do so much for him. But the other person, if they were feeling it and they were able to recognize it, then maybe they would be able to accept it. But if they don't recognize it as love, then it's a lot more difficult to...
It is, and it also helps you manage your expectations as well, because you're kind of not then expecting to receive grand gestures if that's not your thing, and if that doesn't really mean anything to you. So it helps you both manage your expectations, and it helps you focus your energy then. So instead of trying to figure it out, trying to like, I'll try this week, I'll try that, oh, there's no pleasing him or her, actually do this, figure out how to communicate love to each other, and then get on with it. Like, tell each other, right, under this category, I would love these 5 things at this kind of frequency.
It reminds me of this. Have you ever seen that show, Don't Tell the Bride? Have you ever watched that? There was a couple on there. No. Oh my god, it is really amusing. I find it really funny. Anyway, there was a couple on there, and the guy, he just kept doing these really grand gestures. Like he proposed on like this billboard, and it wasn't a proposal because obviously they're already engaged by that point. It's the invitation to the wedding, because what happens is the groom plans the whole wedding. They're given a budget, and then the bride has nothing. She has no control. So she just has to basically turn up on the day. She has no idea of anything. So you and I could never do this, because we would never trust anybody with such an important task. But this one couple in particular, he kept doing that. The invitation to the day, he did it in like a shopping mall, and it was on this big sort of screen, and it was like, you know, make sure you're available on this day or whatever. And she was mortified, and you could see that she was so like just embarrassed and crushed. And then she even said so many times that he's overly romantic, but that wasn't her. She didn't want that. She just wanted really quiet things. And it did make me think, sort of moving forward, how they're going to manage. And he was very much, he wasn't moving away from it every single step forward. He just continued to shower this like almost suffocating amount of love, and she did seem very overwhelmed. So in the short term, you know, and I think a lot of times when you're going into a relationship, you do sort of have those sort of blinders, don't you? And you think, oh, you know, but he's really nice, but he's really this, but he's really that. And they say love is blind, don't they? Because you do kind of block those things out. And then once that rings on that finger and you've moved in with them, all of a sudden these little things that didn't bother you and you didn't see become so big. So you're going to tell us how to manage these, aren't you?
Well, that's one of my tips, is learn each other's love language. And then we'll move on to the second tip. So find Gary Chapman's book, do the quiz. I think he's even got an app now, so you could just download the app and do the quiz. So the second tip of the day is nurture your friendship.
Okay.
So for everybody listening in who is just getting engaged and really excited about the wedding and getting married, I'm going to just tell you something that's going to disappoint you a little bit, okay? But it's going to prepare you. It's for your benefit. It's for your benefit. And that is that euphoric feeling that you have in the early years of meeting somebody, it actually doesn't last forever. And that euphoric feeling settles down and moves into a lovely passion and a lovely affection for each other, but it's not euphoric. You're not going to go giddy every time you think about him. That does wear off after a while. So I'm sorry, girls.
Me yet. But I think it depends on the person as well, because some people can just, just be in love with love.
Well,
but
no,
I think generally speaking, you're right. And obviously 7 years is not as long as 15 or 20 or 30.
It's a chemical reaction that we have. So when we fall in love with somebody, we meet somebody that we really love, a chemical reaction happens within us, and that creates this euphoric state. I'm not saying that you stop loving and you stop feeling passionate about them, but actually if you think back to the first couple of years that you met your husband, that
the constant
feeling
butterflies and the constant sort of my God,
that euphoria is very different to once you settle into life together and you're living your day-to-day life. You're still passionate, you're still affectionate, you still want to be around each other, but the euphoria goes. And when the euphoria goes, a lot of couples think, oh no, this means our relationship is not as great as it used to be. Actually, no, that just means that all those chemicals that were going rampant in your body have calmed down now. And actually you've settled down, they're with you, and this is how it's going to be. Now, what happens is, obviously, as you know, Sophia, life happens, and sometimes we have transitions that are really, really difficult to deal with. People pass away in our lives, or we have bad news with work, or other things can happen to us. And who's the one person we call when we need support? It's a friend. And that was my kind of, this tip is all about that. So nurture a friendship with your fiance, with your husband, once he becomes your husband, because if you don't and you stay in that kind of romantic euphoric stage, you don't have the deep meaningful conversations, because let's face it, at first it's a very kind of physical relationship. It's very heady, and you don't necessarily talk about the deep meaningful things that are actually going to affect you. So having that conversation of, what if something happens to me and I have an accident and you have to
interrupt you, but even just like the physical thing, because so many people they get married just for looks. Lots of people are agreeing with you. Friendship is so important. Yes, friendship is crucial. So absolutely, you get into a relationship because you think somebody's so good looking, and they're giving off this whole aura, but actually if you don't connect on that deeper level, there is only so far that is going to be able to progress, because there's so much there's so much.
And friendship means that you're mates, you're there for each other, you can have banter and a laugh, and not every day is going to be like that, because obviously when you're busy and you're not seeing each other that much, you want to look forward to just hanging out with this person and being with them. And so I feel like friendship is like the cement. It's the glue that underpins your relationship, no matter where you go emotionally. And as women, we travel emotionally. Sometimes, when we've got young families with young babies, we're kind of really into them, and we're not necessarily able to give our husbands the kind of time that we would like. But if you're friends, you're going to know that we're going to ride this wave. It's going to get better. Whatever's going on right now will pass.
As well with you, because your friend is there to hold your hand. Do you know what I mean? Your friend never says, all right, well, I can see you're really struggling with that baby, I'll see you later. Do you know, your friend would never do that. Your friend would be like, come on, let me hold her, or him. So it's I'm just using that example because you did, but so it's so important that that friendship part is there, so that people can be supportive. Otherwise what's the point?
Exactly. So the tip around that is communicate, listen more than you talk, play together, you know, have a laugh, do stuff together, make date nights or whatever feels
Date night
comfortable
is so
for you.
important.
So important, yeah. And you know, at the end of the day, when you're tired, that's not the best time to have a conversation and have a laugh together, because you really just, you're not going to go to places where you probably should go. And if you think about the times that you spend with your actual friends and the conversations that you have, you, with the friends that you've had for years, you can quickly get to a really good place. And that's what you should be thinking about nurturing with your fiance,
Definitely.
you know, for marriage, is how do we quickly get to those really good deep conversations without it feeling awkward and I'm not really sure how to start this conversation.
When you get to that point where you're not sure to start conversation, not when you're not sure to start conversations, but if you feel like you can't talk to them, that is a major problem, I think.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it really needs to be your best friend. It really needs to be somebody you can tell absolutely anything to. And sometimes some conversations are difficult to broach. But if you can't have that conversation, you know, really think, is this the person that I want to be spending the rest of my life with? Because that person is going to have to, you know, hold your hand through everything, and vice versa as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that the year or 2 years leading up to the wedding, like when you get engaged and you're kind of planning everything, that's the perfect time to nurture that friendship, to kind of just have a laugh. Don't focus so much on the wedding that you don't have time to just be friends and kind of grow that side of your relationship, grow some hobbies together and find out what each other's into, try each other's thing out, whatever that is, and kind of have a laugh, you know.
And even if that's not your thing, you know, indulge it.
Yeah,
Do you know
exactly.
what I mean? That's what marriage and being in a relationship is about. You know, indulge their passion, they indulge your passion, and you know, the middle ground. You know, you don't always have to just do what you want to do or always do what he wants to do. It can be both.
Exactly. So let's move on to tip number 3.
Ready. I am
this
ready.
So tip number 3 is finances.
Oh God. Yeah.
The question is, are you a big spender or are you frugal? You have to know your relationship with money before you even have a conversation with anybody else about their relationship with money, before you judge anybody else. Your beliefs about the role that money plays in your life is important to know in advance. And these are things that people don't know ever. Like they get to their 50s and they still don't know what their relationship is with money because they've never really questioned it.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
when we tend to take on our parents or our families' beliefs around money, and we never really sit down and create our own beliefs around money. And this is really important. So how resourceful do you think you are? And what does money enable you to do in your life? What kind of choices does it give you? Do you enjoy
the frightened to talk about money? And a lot, and I think a lot of the there's a massive stigma around money, isn't it? Nobody really wants to say, oh, you know, I'm trying to, this is how much I make. You know, everything's always very secretive, how much I spend. You know, nobody really wants to tell anybody. And then when you're trying to open up that conversation, it can be really daunting, or even ask, because you want to know what is, you know, the financial situation of the other person. Because okay, maybe when you're just girlfriend, boyfriend, or like fiance, whatever, you're not actually married yet. But once you're in a marriage, then you know it's not just his account or your account anymore. It becomes a huge part of your relationship.
I think before you can broach that conversation, you have to know what your relationship with money is and how you manage your own finances and how you like to splash your cash, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
What are priorities for you? Because until you don't know that, it's really hard to broach a conversation. Because if let's say you're really frugal and he's a big spender, how are you going to have that conversation? Because you're other ends of the spectrum. But if you can understand why you're so frugal, if you know why you have those beliefs, and you know it might be that you feel that your relationship with money is actually a little bit unbalanced, it might be that you need to fix that first. Spend some months fixing that, thinking about your beliefs around money, where they've come from. Why am I so frugal?
Where would one start then? to do that, because I think a lot of people don't, and like you said, go into like maybe their whole life and not understand their own relationship with money. So where would you kind of like, what's
straight away? I mean, I guess the conversations will come up as you start planning the wedding. You're going to start thinking about budgets, and you're going to start thinking about, well, what are you paying for and what are we paying for? And as those conversations come up, that should be the signal to start thinking about your own relationship with money. Because and this is something that I hear a lot in the Asian community in particular, where it tends to be, and I will be, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're around brides way more than I do. It's usually the brides that want a massive, lavish wedding, and the guys are like, do we have to? And
because especially if the guys are paying, I think they do feel, it's a big burden. And I think that especially within the Asian wedding community, it's become such an enormous thing that, that if they don't have the latest this or the biggest that, and the biggest name for everything, it becomes like you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. And then some guys are just like, why am I having to do this? Like, I thought this was about us. And I think as a community, I think it is a nice time and a good time to kind of think and strip back. But I think a lot of brides are now going down the route that actually we're going to go abroad and spend that money on ourselves, or actually we're going to spend that money on a deposit on a house, because frankly, I'm sorry, uncles and aunties are never impressed. Nobody's ever really impressed. You might have spent, and people are getting mortgages out to afford these weddings and stuff, and it's really sad that people are having to put themselves under such immense pressure. But yeah, I can certainly imagine why grooms or even brides would be resentful of how much they're having to spend.
I think the
pressure.
Yeah, well, this is it, and I think the problem gets bigger when you're both on different, like you both want different things.
Yeah.
And you want, and then that spills into your marriage. So okay, you might be able to ride the wave for the wedding and think, okay, well, the wedding will be over next month, next year, whenever it might be. But actually, what you've done there is created a tension that goes into your marriage
that can never ever be lost, and families never ever forget, because often families, that is the only time they really get to know that person, whether it be the bride or the groom. That's the only time that they get to really spend a lot of time with them and see parts of you, because you're so stressed, that you may have conceal in other circumstances, or you may have more patience in other circumstances, but in those situations you may not. And then that is the little things that people kind of hold on to and remember forever, and it'll be 20 years down the line, and do you remember when she was getting married and she did this? Do you know what I mean? And we don't, as Asians, we don't let go. That's my view on it anyway.
Yeah, and you're around brides all the time, so I'm sure you're hearing both ends of the kind of argument on this front. So I would say, find out what your relationship is with money, find out why you have that belief, whichever way it is, whether it's I'm really generous or whether it's I'm very frugal. Just figure it out, find out why you have it, see if you can moderate it, and then bring up the conversation. Because if you're in the extremes, you're going to have a really difficult time. And if you are both big spenders, that's not going to be good for you either. You need to think about how you can kind of both reach a kind of neutral place with money, with your relationship with money moving forward. Because, it's one of the things that most people argue over. It's one of the things that most marriages break down over. And I think that if you can start having a conversation early on, knowing your relationship with it, and having a measured conversation, not from an emotional place, just from a very objective, this is the budget we have, this is how we need to spend it. And there's a lot of resources and books around.
Don't be scared to talk about it, because it is something, it's a massive part of life, and it's something that's always going to be there. And as you move forward, it's going to be even more important. There's going to be times where you have lots of money, and there's going to be times where you have no money potentially, and you're going to and this is the person who you're going to have to balance that with. So you might avoid the conversation now, but you can never avoid that conversation, can never be avoided forever. It's one you're going to have most weeks, depending on your situation. I have actually a question on, is that okay? I've got a question on this topic actually. Somebody said, oh, I am in a lot of debt, but I am too scared to tell my family, let alone my partner. How can I approach this conversation with him? I feel for her so much.
Oh, that's a tricky one, isn't it? I think you just
I do
have
not.
to, I think you have to pluck up the courage and start having the conversations, because the sooner you do, you might find that it's not as badly received as you think, because that kind of fear of having the conversation can debilitate you more than the conversation. I think when it comes to anything like that, secrecy is not the best option. I
No.
think just find the courage, have the conversation with your family, and see, maybe they can help you in some way. Maybe they can give you some kind of a short loan to see you through the next few months, or whatever they can do for you.
Oh, seek the help, because we don't know how much debt there is, and I am a big believer in empowering oneself. So rather than, I see what you mean about sort of asking for money, but sometimes it can be like, okay, well, actually, can you help me again? Because if it's that kind of addiction and you're just buying and you're spending out of your means, it's never going to go away until you start getting help. So maybe but we don't know what the situation is. She may only have like £100 on a credit card, I don't know, but it does say that she's in a lot of debt. So the other thing that I would say is, sometimes when if you speak to your partner, he may be in a similar situation. So by you opening that conversation, he might actually have to tell you, well, actually, I'm in the same situation, or don't worry, I've just been given £1 million in whatever, and we can cover this, but I still think you need to get help sort of moving forward so we avoid the situation. So you never know what the response is. Like you said, got to pluck the courage and just say, because exactly like you said, that the fear of having the conversation is more paralyzing sometimes.
Exactly. I think it depends on how you broach it and how you have the conversation. If you expect handouts and you expect help, that's the wrong way to have the conversation.
Definitely.
The way to have the conversation is to say, this is what I've done, and I don't feel happy in this place, and I need support, whatever that looks like, emotional support, financial support, whatever that might be, and to have it in a way that makes the other person feel that you're ready to do whatever it takes to get yourself out of that situation as well, and not necessarily needing
she should
to
speak to her family first and maybe have like a trial conversation.
I would say yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Speak to the people you feel safest with first, work with them for a few weeks, get some support, feel comfortable with opening up, and then let him know.
And maybe you can resolve the situation before, but that doesn't mean definitely work on yourself. If you're having, you do resolve it before you get married. Be mindful of what has happened before, and you're potentially going to be scared to get into that situation again, so that will affect your marriage. So he might not understand, oh look, well, why can't we just get this car on finance, or why can't we just go on this holiday on finance? And you'll need to have the conversation at some point that, look, this happened and I got into trouble and now I'm really scared, so we need to be careful, we need to manage this. And so yeah, that's great. Well done, that's a very good answer. Do you want to go on to your next tip? We've got 25 minutes left, Roxana. It's just flying by. I cannot believe it.
Okay, brilliant. So my tip number 4 is to agree on how to resolve problems. Okay, you are going to hit problems whether you like it or not, and they're going to go beyond the wedding prep stuff. And if you think that's hard, wait till you get married. There'll be so many big decisions that you have to make together. I think that you have to accept one thing: disagreements happen all the time. They happen all the time. They happen between friends, people that love each other, between you and your kids. Disagreements happen. It's just part of our human experience. But what you have to decide on is how you're going to deal with disagreements and all the variable scenarios that are likely to come up in advance. How to fight fairly, how to come out of an argument or a disagreement where you're not both wounded and now feeling even worse because you've had this conversation that needed to be had, and actually the conversation went so badly that now you're in pain because of that conversation. You know,
On
you've
top of what you
inflicted
already got.
and on top of what was already going on. So that my suggestion is really just around being gentle with each other. Like, if find out how the other person communicates. Like, if they come from a family that's really loud, shouts a lot, that's how they have their disagreements, but you're a gentle person, a gentle soul, you're quite sensitive, and that would freak you out. Well, these are the conversations you need to be having before you get married. So how do we resolve stuff without me feeling like you've completely like wounded me, and you thinking that I'm just being really passive because I don't shout and I'm not confrontational. And it's having that conversation really. How do we do that? How do we find a way out that leaves us both feeling like it's us versus the problem rather than us versus each other?
Yeah, definitely. Because this is where all the little problems start, and then they become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where they feel unresolvable because you've just gone one after the other without fixing it. One thing I would say is don't brush things under the carpet. Never ever. So if you're just like, oh, do you know what, I'm really angry with you and we haven't resolved it, but we're just going to move on, because that problem is still going to be there. And you're never going to always agree on things. That's, you know, let's be realistic. But you need to, this is coming from my own experience, never sleep on an argument. Never ever let my husband go to sleep. If I'm upset or he's upset, I'm like, okay, look, we are going to thrash this out. We're not moving on to tomorrow. And I know it's really, like, a lot of people say that, but I think there's a lot to be said for that. There's a reason why people who have been in long-term relationships give that advice. It's so important. Yeah, I think that's it really.
Absolutely.
Just the talking to each other and not being afraid of what the other person is going to say.
I think
and be acceptant of that as well.
Absolutely. I think it's going back to Gary Chapman's 5 languages of love. In a way, how do we, you know, that's about how do we love each other, and this is about how do we disagree with each other in a respectful way.
That was my third point that I actually lost the train of thought. I was just going to say that the other thing that we did before we got married was really like, okay, these are the situations that we could have, that could potentially come up. I was like, how would you handle that situation? How would you handle this situation? Just so you can get an idea of somebody's temperament. You can get an idea of, you never ever know if someone's telling the truth. That's one thing. So you do have to be careful. But, you know, there's so many things you can thrash out before to understand the psychology of somebody and how to handle them. Okay, look, when we get into this situation, there's going to be times that we're going to get into situations. How are we going to work from that? It's good to sort of lay those ground rules first. So look, if I get angry, do you know what? It's probably best if you leave me alone, because at that time I don't want to be spoken to, and I'm not a good person to talk to at that time. So I suggest you leave me alone, and then we can just come back later. And don't be offended. You know, those things you could say. You know what you're like. You can say in advance, and they would help in the future. And then he's not going to be resentful that, oh, you know, what, well, you left me. But like you said, it's like the language of love. If he likes to be left alone when he's upset, he may feel that you like to be left alone. But as women, generally, I don't think we do.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, this is it. And I think that you've made a really good point in that we have to know ourselves first. We have to know, who am I and how do I respond when somebody's shouting at me? How do I respond when somebody isn't talking to me? Like, some men can be quite passive. My husband is. You know, when we have conflict, he's very quiet. He doesn't say anything back to me because he's a thinker. He likes to try to understand why I'm losing my shit.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's that way, whereas I like feedback. Like, I'm saying this, give me feedback, and he's like, no, I need to go away, think about it. And it took us years to figure that out, that that's how we disagree, and that we've got to find a way to come back together that doesn't leave either of us kind of licking our wounds and feeling even worse.
I'm saying this, and you've got nothing to offer to the conversation. You don't care.
Yes,
actually,
exactly.
He does really care. He just wants to respond in the right way to fix it and make you better. So yeah, that's a really interesting viewpoint, because sometimes my husband goes quiet and I'm like, hello, talking to you. Okay.
And it's really easy to assume that they're just not interested, or they don't care, or because you're already quite emotional, you then draw conclusions. You start telling yourself a story about how much they're vested in this relationship anyway, and it can spiral from there. And especially if you're not doing any of the other things around nurturing your friendship, around, you know, if there are financial things going on that you haven't really talked about, if you're not on the same page and you don't know each other's love languages, all of that, then when you do have a disagreement, it can result in things spiraling very quickly, in a place that feels much harder to come back from.
Yeah, because then you've allowed everything to build, and then you can't. There's no more space left under the carpet to shove things. I think we have a question about something similar. Okay, I have seen many sparks of anger in my partner. The slightest thing can make him snap and ruin the rest of the day or evening. He's always gentle with me, but there is a little part of me that worries about his temper. Is this normal in some males, and what can I do to help him calm down?
Oh, wow. As I said at the beginning, don't take on a project.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly what I'm thinking.
If somebody is angry and that seems to be their temperament generally, then it might be wise to have a conversation with them about their temperament. See what they're like actually around their family. That's a really good way of seeing what somebody's like. Nowadays, people are much freer before they get married, in the sense that they can go to each other's houses and they can see how a guy or a girl relates to their mom, dad, siblings, and it gives you a really good indication of how they care for the people they love. Now, if they come across rude, abrupt, sarcastic, not very kind to the people that they love the most, then I think that's a red flag. I think that's a red flag. You need to listen to that. You're not going to be able to change him if that's how he is. I would suggest that you
only he can change himself. So, you know, it's worth having the conversation that, you know, these are things that are worrying me. What can we do? What help can we get for you to work on that? But like you said, because some girls, you know, if you've invested 3 years in a relationship with somebody, it might be very difficult just sort of now. But then
hopefully you would know well before you get to the 3-year point that this person's got a temper. Like, that would have, if they've got a temper, it will have shown itself way before the 3-year mark. I think that people have to be wanting to work on themselves. I've coached a couple of clients who have anger issues, who had anger issues, I should say. And it was because they wanted not to be that way anymore. They wanted to resolve whatever wounds were going on emotionally inside them that led to them behaving and being angry as a default emotion. And I think that's something that will kind of not get better with time. You can't, as a girl, you know, as a fiance who really cares about somebody, you can't assume that your love and your understanding is going to help him to resolve deep rooted issues that are going on inside him. He needs to get the help, and I think that would be the starting point, is have the conversation, ask him to get help, and if he's not interested in getting help, that's a red flag.
Massive red flag. Anybody who doesn't, you know, is not willing to take your concerns on board, and sort of say, okay, you know, this is valid, or have the conversation at least, you know, I think that's a huge oh, sorry ladies, I don't want to break any hearts. I feel bad, but you know, it is a huge red flag, and they are, you know, sometimes that little voice inside is really worth listening to. Which tip are we on now?
We are about to go into tip number 5.
Okay, I'm ready. I feel like it's so emotional journey that we've just been on.
Right, so the last one is probably the most important one, and it's about building dreams together.
Yeah, I like this.
And this goes beyond the wedding dream, by the way. This is not about the big wedding day. This is about building a life together, building dreams together. It's so important, because this is where the passion in your marriage comes alive. This is what you get out of bed for every day, and go off and do and create your own little thing, your own little impact in the universe. And there's going to be lots of things that you dream about doing together. So it might be, you know, setting up your first home. It might be thinking about traveling together. You might be thinking about starting a family together. And those are things that you can dream about together and kind of move forward and build. But it's so important to support each other's dreams as well, and not to feel that you know, you can't have your dreams because you're getting married. You've got to continue to have dreams, because that's part of you and your identity and the impact that you want to make in the world. So it's so important that you support each other, you give attention
and
to
like what the dreams are, isn't it? You have to recognize that, okay, you know, this is important to me, because never bury yourself for somebody else, because it's never going to go away, that feeling of having lost something, you know, and then it can build into resentment and sadness, and you feel like this person has actually taken it away from you, although you had, you know, you've gone into a relationship yourself, so you have to be accountable for that, but then you go on to blame, oh, you know, all these years that I spent on you, you know, for example, but actually what have I got back? So it's
exactly, and there'll be times
together, and if they're totally different, you know, really think about, is this something that you can give up? Is this something that you do want to go ahead with? Because it's a big thing.
Well, we know that sometimes you have to put your dreams on hold. So when I was having my children, I had to put my dreams on hold for a little while because they were so young, they were so needy, and that was fine. That was a deal that we made, and I knew that he's going to keep his end of the deal. And now they're older. He's reduced how much he works, so I can work more. And you know, and those are things that throughout the 15 years of marriage that we've been together, we've had various times where we've both been able to pursue our individual dreams, and then various times where I've parked mine so he can do his, and now he's parking his so I can do mine. And sometimes when there isn't, you know, there's only so many hours in a day, there's only so much resource that you can put into something. Those are things that you have to come up with solutions for. I'm not going to say compromise, because compromise always means that somebody's feeling like they've been hard done to, like they've had to dim their light in some way. And I'm not using that word, I'm saying solutions. Come up with solutions together for, you know what, the next 3 years you go out there and do your thing and make an impact, do what you want to do. Absolutely. And then after that, so you
individual happiness comes as well. Do you know what I mean? If otherwise one person, like I said, is just left thinking, oh my god, I've given, I did this, and the other person's oblivious. This is where that whole communication really is so important as well.
And friendship and support and all those kind of building blocks of a really good relationship come into play when you're building dreams together. Because what you're saying is, I really want you to succeed. I want to see you living a life of success and satisfaction, because I know when you're doing your thing, you're going to be the best version of you, and that's who I deserve, and vice versa. And they're the conversations that you have to be ready to have before you get married.
Friendship as well, doesn't it, that we're talking about before? Because, you know, like those conversations you can have with friends, and that conversation is so important to be able to have with your partner. Otherwise you're left with you know. And the other thing is to understand what dreams you have, and when you're sharing that with that person, that, you know, how willing you are to compromise on them. And if there's so many worlds apart from what the other person wants, actually, I've got a question which is similar to that. It said, I'm in my late 30s and often spend time alone and traveling. I'm getting married next year and worry about losing that independence. What can I do to strike a balance? Sometimes the thought of marriage is really suffocating. I really love him and want to start the next phase of my life. But I just, when I was reading that and I was thinking about the traveling part, it sounds like that's her dream and that's her thing. And, you know, she...
Well, I think she might be making assumptions that she's going to have to curb how much she travels. He might be completely fine with that. It's a conversation, you know. You've got to have that conversation to know what you're about to walk into in terms of a marriage and a relationship. So it might be he's absolutely fine with it and she's got nothing to worry about.
Viewers have said, oh my god, that's me. Well, what did you do? Tell us the answer. Help our friends.
I think this is it. I think sometimes we make assumptions that marriage means this because we've looked at our parents or we've looked at our older siblings or other people in our community, and we assume that marriage means I'm going to have to compromise.
Yeah.
And I just don't think you do. I think you come up with new solutions to solve issues or solve the way that you want to work together. You design and craft the marriage that you want. You don't have to just react and respond to every new thing that happens. Design it, craft it every day. That should be your mission in life, really. And I think you just have to, I never stop doing anything.
I've just carried on. He will just have to accept it. Ha ha ha.
Amazing.
Exactly. And this is
Yeah.
it, you have to, and I think if that person loves you, they will support that. But it's all about having the conversation first. When you suddenly spring things on people or don't discuss it at all, and then, a year down the marriage, I've always wanted to do this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This is news to me, and if it's not managing, this is how relationships start to crack and break down. The whole purpose of today's conversation is to make it as possible, as easy as it can be, sort of get all those thoughts dealt with. Can I give you one more question, because I know we haven't actually covered all the questions, and I'm going to send them over to you so maybe we can this is actually not from a bride, but I think it will apply to people, so we'll ask. Someone's put, how can I make my mother-in-law see my child is mine first? She often thanks me for looking after her grandchild and making little comments that make me feel like an outsider.
That's a toughie.
Bad, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is, if I'm truthful. I think it's so many variables in that situation. I think there's probably a cultural thing going on there. There's probably a power thing going on there. There's probably insecurity going on there from her side. I think
what can she do? Because we discussed this before, didn't we? You can't change somebody else. If somebody's got that habit of making little digs, or they've obviously got their own issue with you, clearly, or it could be that actually they're not. Maybe they're just genuinely thankful, and you taking it the wrong way. So maybe, what can she do? What work maybe could she do on herself?
I think she can work on herself first and foremost. Is why are those comments affecting her? Where's that coming from? Is it coming from her upbringing? Is it coming from her insecurities? Where is it coming from that she feels that those are hurtful comments? Because sometimes we have to just sit with ourselves a little bit and think, why has that hurt me? Because actually they might be genuine, and we have to give people the benefit of the doubt. And this is the one thing that changes everything, is when we assume that everybody is doing the best that they know how to. Her mother-in-law is doing the best that she knows how to. And you have to remember, sometimes that's all people have known. That's the culture, the upbringing, the kind of environment they've always been in. That's all they know. And they don't probably mean to be spiteful or harmful. It's just, why not? Why not thank a daughter-in-law for taking really good care of the baby? Because it's hard work raising a baby, right? So you just reframe it.
Recognizing her efforts and trying to appreciate her. Do you think it's worth having a conversation, or do you think she should bring it up with her?
I think she should do some inner work. I think she should do some inner work first. Understand why it's hurting. Why does it hurt when she says that? And she might be able to resolve it all internally before she even needs to have a conversation, because that conversation could spiral into something that, if the intention is really positive by the mother-in-law, then obviously that conversation, depending on how it's broached, could resolve into something quite negative.
And if she is just being nasty and she's just making little digs, there's nothing you can do to really change.
She's not going to change. Nothing that you're going to say
is make a bigger problem. Maybe that's why she's saying those things, to cause to wind you up, to push you to that edge. So it's so hard. Like you said, these are the kind of questions that there's so many variables.
There are, and I think the first thing is just knowing yourself. Like, why are things upsetting you? Why are you letting somebody upset you? Why have you given somebody so much power over your emotional well-being that the way they look at you, the comment they make about your child or you really affects you? Like, if you love yourself, actually it will just bounce off you, because you know who you are, you know your worth. And it's where people are insecure, where they don't know their worth, where they don't love themselves, that actually those comments hurt.
Doubt maybe inside as well, if you have
Yeah.
that niggling doubt that actually, you know, do I look after my child enough, or whatever, I don't know. Because as women, we do have lots of insecurities, don't we? As
We
people.
do. Yeah, we always question, am I doing the right thing by my baby? You know, we're always questioning that, aren't we? It's kind of part of being a mum.
Yeah, definitely. It's natural, I think.
It is. It is. And I think that we eventually kind of, you know, you come through it, don't you? You come through that, and then you find
by the time when you're like third baby, you're like, oh, well,
yeah.
you're in the washing machine again, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that would be my thing, is just look within, resolve your, you know, and that's the thing with all of these 5 tips, is really just about you. Figure out who you are, figure out your love language, figure out your financial situation, figure out how you like to be befriended and how you like to befriend others. What are your dreams? You know, what are your dreams? And there's so many people that have never thought about their dream. Their dream is to get married. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's like, really?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know.
Yeah.
What you mean.
So there's so many other things to think about in terms of yourself before you go into a marriage, because then you're coming from a position of strength in a way. You're secure.
Absolutely.
You know yourself, and then you'll spot the problems.
Empower your partner as well by broaching these conversations. And I love the topics you've picked. They are so wholesome, and it's all about what you can affect rather than other people. And you're empowering your partner and you're empowering your marriage by taking these 5 little steps. You'll be automatically be in so much of a better place. I'm so excited for everybody who's watching this, and I hope it's really brought them, you know, great benefit. And you know, we've got 1 minute left before Instagram kicks us off. So I thank you so much, Roxana. I could chat to you all night, as you know, but I just want to thank you. You've been such an amazing guest.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. And you look beautiful, by the way. I love your makeup.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Take
Thanks,
care,
guys. Thanks for joining us. Take care now. Bye.
Bye.